What's up, DAW Nation? My name is Wyatt Troy, and I want to welcome you to episode 8 of Behind the DAW. Now, what is Behind the DAW? If this is the first time that you're listening, Behind the DAW is a podcast where I interview music producers, artists, music industry experts, people of that nature on an emotional, philosophical, and artistic basis, so I can get inside their heads, gather that best information, and then bring it back to you so it can help you on your musical journey. And it's free. It's freaking free. You don't have to pay 1 cent for it, and it will always be free. You know what else is free? Our companion YouTube series, In the DAW, where we invite artists to come and dissect their songs in real time. We've had people like Mode Step, Fox Stevenson, AU5, Quicks, Said the Sky, and a slew of other people. You can find that on YouTube, as well as you can listen to the audio versions of it here in the podcast. Those are the 0.5 episodes. So I'd highly encourage you to check that out. Before we get started, I got 3 links in the description that I'd highly encourage you to check out. First link is a link to the Patreon. Now, I said that this was free, and it is free. Behind the DAW and In the DAW will always be free, but if you want to help sustain that, if you want to make sure that these things never go out of business, that we can keep doing this indefinitely for the rest of our lives, you can contribute to the Patreon. It is $1 a month, literally $1 a month. It's a 13th of the price of Netflix. It's an 1/8 of the price of Hulu, and I don't even know if those are the correct prices. That's the last time I looked, it was those. Anyways, doesn't matter. So, but it's super cheap, and plus you get access to a private community on Discord where I'm constantly sharing tips, tricks, the newest things in the music industry, plus exclusive content. So if you want to do that to help us out, please check that out. Also, there's $5 options, $15 options, $25 options, and each one yields more and more rewards for the people that contribute to the show. So thank you so much for our current patrons that we have. We literally love you. I can't express my gratitude. Like, literally, thank you so much, guys. So the second link that we have is for artist suggestions. If you want to suggest someone to come on the show for us to interview, whether for In the DAW or Behind the DAW, there is a link down in the description. Go ahead and click on that. It'll take you to our DAW bot. You can tell him everything that you want, and he will transfer that information over to us. And then finally, the link that has been a very hot topic amongst our listeners is the private lessons link. If you want private lessons in electronic music production or in social media marketing, go ahead and click on that link. It'll set you up. It'll send you over to the website so that we can get those lessons for you and keep helping you progress as a producer, as a musician, as an artist. So with all of that out of the way, who's the special guest? His name is White Light. We went to Icon Collective together. This guy is a genius, especially when it comes to the business side, which is what we're going to be talking about today. Here's a couple things that you're going to be learning today. The first thing is what I kind of already mentioned is we're going to be talking about business. What about business? We're going to be talking about looking at music through the eyes of business. Now, of course, we're supposed to look at music through the eyes of artistry, of passion. That is absolutely essential. But the reality is, if you are going to make this a living, you have to look at it through business. That's it. If you want to make art for the sake of making art, don't worry about business. Literally do whatever you want. But if you want to make this a living, if you want to make this full time so that you can do this all the time, you have to look at it through business. It's inevitable. And it doesn't have to be a painful experience. It can actually be a very fun experience. It can actually enhance the artistic vision if you do it correctly. So we're going to be talking about that. Second thing we're going to be talking about is what makes someone flaky. We all have that flaky friend or that flaky family member. It's not fun to be around them. You can't trust them. If you can't trust them with their word, what can you trust them with? So what makes someone flaky, and how can you prevent yourself from being flaky? And how can you make up for the times that you have been flaky? That's good to know. This is very important, especially, around this episode, we're going to be talking about business and what it means to be flaky in a business sense. And so we're going to talk about how to avoid that, because you don't want to get caught up in that. At the time of recording this, we're only 7 episodes in. I've already encountered so many flaky people. So we're going to talk about that and how to avoid that. Third thing we're going to talk about is why it's okay to have a team when creating a business, and especially in music. We give the music industry a really hard time whenever they come in and they're like, hey man, I can't believe you have this person doing this thing for your team, so on and so forth. And a lot of people give musicians, producers a really hard time for doing that. Man, what? Are you serious? Look at any other business in the entire world and they have a team. To have a business that's one man and to have that business be extremely successful, that's not the norm. That's the exception. The norm is that someone has a team. Especially, every artist that I've interviewed on the show, and even the artists that I haven't interviewed on the show that I just know of, they all have teams. You have to have a team. And we'll talk about that, how to find a proper team, and how to find a team that will not only help you, but synergistically help you exponentially, compounding the efforts that you put into your business. So don't worry, we'll get into that. So with all that out of the way, if you like this episode, please like, comment, subscribe, repost, follow, whatever is appropriate on the particular platform that you are listening on, whether that's SoundCloud, Spotify, YouTube, Google Play, Deezer, wherever you're listening to this, it doesn't matter. Whatever's appropriate, please do that to let us know that what we're doing is legitimate, that we are helping you along your journey, so that we just know. We just want to make this the best possible podcast for you, for your particular needs. And so with all that out of the way, without further ado, I want to introduce you to White Light. I just want to welcome everyone to episode 8 of Behind the DAW. Today we have White Light. He's a really good friend of mine. He's a co-student at Icon Collective, and we'll hear just a little bit more about him in just a minute. I also want to welcome my co-host for today, Maxim. Dude, I can't say your last name. You're going to have to say your last name.
Poirier. It means pear tree in French, actually. So you can just call me Maxim Pear Tree from now on.
We have Maxim Pear Tree, who is also co-student at Icon Collective, and so it's really good to have him here. And he goes by, for sure you're going by Feist now?
Yeah.
Cool. He's going by Feist. He's a very talented producer down in Panama. So thank you so much for being here, man. Brandon, you are the man of the hour. We're so excited to have you here. You and I, we've been meeting about once every other week or once a week for a couple months now, and I'm really grateful to have you come on. I think you're a great candidate for this kind of podcast. So first off, for those who don't know you, tell us more about you in any fashion that you want to, anything that you're comfortable with.
All right. I mean, it's a tricky question. Thank you for having me on this. I really appreciate it. My name is Brandon. I'm a 20-year-old music producer, DJ, based out of Calgary in Canada. I've been producing music since I was about 16, and I've been DJing since I was 13. Right now, I currently study at Icon Collective in LA. I do it all from home, and at the same time, I'm able to run 2 successful businesses at my young age, and I love everything I do.
What are your 2 businesses that you run, for those who don't know?
My first business I started when I was 13, and that was my mobile DJ business. I'll go into details about that a little bit later. And then my second business is actually a clothing line startup, which is somewhat correlated to my music, but it's almost like a separate brand of clothing where I can grow it as my music grows, the clothing business grows, and it's just something I'm extremely passionate about as well.
And I can testify, I've seen some of the videos. By the way, if you haven't seen any of his videos, please go check them out. Not only are they extremely high quality, but more often than not, they're hilarious.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely. But in your videos, you wear your clothing. It looks clean, it looks nice, it looks high quality. And so I highly encourage anyone to go check that out.
What was your first inspiration to kind of get you started in music at such a young age and whatnot? Was it just like old Tomorrowland, Ultra?
No, man, it was totally different. So I didn't even know what a DJ was until I was about 13 years old. Like, I was playing sports all up until then. And one day I walked into Future Shop, or like our local, whatever, electronics store.
Man,
I saw this pair of decks. These are sweet. It was like a Newmark iDJ3. Like, it was like the worst thing. It was run on virtual DJ. It had like an iPod hookup, like the old school one, where it had like the big adapter, so you could play like 2 things off your laptop and 1 iPod, which made no sense at all. And I like had $300 at the time, and I decided to buy it just spontaneously because I like loved it so much. And I started DJing. I like brought it home. I got my dad's speakers in the garage, and I just started like playing around, and I really fell in love with it. I started playing like old school Deadmau5, Tiesto, Afrojack, like Nicky Romero, all the good guys. And then I started watching YouTube videos, and I saw like how big these DJs were, and I was like, I want to do that. And then I went to a middle school dance when I was super young, like 13. I saw a DJ playing, and the school dance was like the worst experience of my entire life. I was like, I do this at home, like I'm totally going to do this. And so I talked to one of my teachers, and I was like, okay, how much did that guy get paid? And like, how can I do this? She's like, we paid him $500 for 2 hours to DJ. And I was like, you paid him $500 to do that bad of a job? And like, yeah. So by the time I turned 14, I was like, okay, I'm going to get my stuff together. I started looking into more details. And at the same time, I was like DJing. I was just like practicing. And I was like, I'm just an entrepreneur at heart. So I went down to the registry's office. I registered a business. I got like all the paperwork done. I like took out a loan from my dad. I started buying equipment, like speakers and stuff. And I started booking my shows through like Craigslist and all this when I was like 14. I was getting paid pretty decent money not at the start. Like I would make like $200 a gig or whatever, just like go and show up and play for like a really crappy birthday party. And then then that I just kept playing and playing, and I DJ'd, and I just loved it. And I like kept looking more into music, and it just grew all the way from I was like 14 up until I was like 16. I was doing like all these gigs, didn't have to work because I was like making really good money. And I'd take that money and I'd reinvest it back into the business. So I just buy more gear, bigger speakers, bigger subs, more lighting, all this. And then by the time I was 16, I realized, okay, Afrojack and Nicky Romero and all these guys, they're not DJs, they're producers, and then they DJ when they perform. So I realized if I want to actually do that, I have to start producing. So I got enough money from a gig one time and I bought Logic Pro 9, like the old school one. Still have it on one of my laptops. And then started playing around with that. I bought Nexus, which was a lot of money at the time. I think Nexus, if you buy it with like a few expansion packs, was like $1,200. Yeah, started playing around with that, was still DJing at the same time, making decent money. And it just kept growing and growing and growing. And business got like really, really big to the point where my business, I mean, when I was like 17, 18, it was like one of the biggest in the provinces. It was really, really big. And I definitely dreamed about it. Like I used to draw out like how I wanted my designs to be and like how I wanted my decks all look. And by the time I was like 17, I had all of it just from like 3 years of hard work and DJing, lots of gigs. And yeah, and then now a few years later, I'm more into music production. Back to the original question, that's kind of how I got into it and how it kind of sparked my inspo.
That's awesome. So you bring up a really interesting concept, and that's that most people think that in order for you to be a true musician and to stay true to the art, basically all you can do is music, period. But you and I have talked, and I know that you have a passion for business, as do I, and as do Maxim. That's why I feel like Maxim is a really good candidate to come on here and be a co-host, because all of us, we're businessmen. You know what I mean? We're artists and we're businessmen, and that's cool. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, do you have to be that? No, but I love that you have your music to basically let that side out of you, that calling out that you have inside of you. But then you're like, you know what? Just the business side of me. What if I made a business that could simultaneously promote my music and provide a little extra on the side? You know what I mean? Or a lot on the side, depending on the type of business. So to me, that's genius. It's absolutely genius. And I would encourage anyone to look into it. What are some of the challenges that you've come across with doing that? I mean, has it been a struggle of time management where you just want to put more into one or the other?
Yeah, I don't know, man. Like I honestly, there wasn't too many struggles. I really found it quite easy because I personally believe if you love to do something, you'll just figure it out regardless. Like I never felt like I would work a day in my life when I was that young. Like I would never take anything back. I mean, some of the struggles I had would be like playing certain gigs that just weren't maybe under my roster. And the older I get, I realize more how I have to say no a lot more. So if I'm playing a gig and they're like, oh, I want you to play like a wedding or whatever, and they'll be like, okay, I'll pay you $1,200 to show up and do a wedding. And I'm like, is that really like underneath who I am right now? Like, am I a DJ now or am I more of an artist? And I almost have to put the back burner on my business and kind of focus more in a different direction. But when I was a lot younger, there was some gigs that definitely it was a struggle to play, especially based on the crowd. So if it was like 50-year-olds, 60-year-olds, like I'd be playing old school music, and sometimes like I really wouldn't want to be doing that, and it just wasn't my gig. But I realized the more gigs you have under your belt, I know how to DJ now. Like I truly know how to DJ. I can read a crowd. But yeah, other than that, I don't think there was a lot of challenges. More challenges now. I believe, like personally, starting a business for me is really easy. Like it's just steps. In a business, there's just like things you have to do to get to a different place, and you know where you're going. As an artist, you have no idea where you're going. There's no structure in music. Like you can't just sit in the studio and be like, hey, I'm going to pump out like a top 40 track just like that. Like you have no idea when that's going to happen. And it's like you're almost reaching in thin air to pull something out. I mean, that people will have different opinions about that. But personally, for a business, like even for my clothing line, it's like, okay, I have to talk to this manufacturer. I have to order this amount of product. I have to get this amount of money. And it's very logical. So even I believe there's a lot more challenges now than there has been, and it's getting a lot more steep as you get more into that artist field.
I actually got something to say about that. Yeah, because I feel like as an artist, yeah, like some days you do feel like you creative and whatnot, and then other days you're just not. But as an artist, if you have your own business and whatnot, you can whenever you wake up. Let's say you're creative one day, you can just sit down in the studio, work on music whenever you feel drained on creativity, then you could go and then like work on your clothing line, like you were saying.
100%, man. 100%. And that exactly. And that's the whole reason I started my clothing. More so now that I'm into like music production and the whole artist side, there is a lot of expenses, and it is very hard to get started in it. And I realized unless you're working a 9-to-5 job, which I do and which I've done, that's you either do that or you start something. And I'm an entrepreneur, and I'm like, okay, how can I build something that's artist related that somewhat my following can connect to, and there can still be an impact, but I don't have to go and I don't have to work a 9-to-5 job. So there's ways to monetize. And if you can figure that out, so you can monetize in something you're passionate about, at the same time, free up your time to be creative, then honestly, I believe truly that's happiness. And because it's hard, it's extremely hard to be an artist.
Yeah. And I mean, I feel like a lot of people, the point that they miss is that, you know, like these big artists like Tiesto and Afrojack, like you were saying before, it's a company, you know, they're the CEO of a company. It's not just like some guy on the back of his computer making music, you know, he's got this huge team in back of him. And there's definitely like other people who are a lot like, you know, better at production and songwriting and whatnot, but it's just because they were very smart business wise and it made some very good business.
Exactly. Yeah. Honestly, right now, like, being a music producer, and for both of you guys, you're both business owners. You are the CEO of your business. And if you treat it that way, then anytime you're not creative, like that's not 100% of your time. The other 90% of your time can be sending emails, getting logos drafted, designing an EPK, like working on certain things that are all business related. And then at the end of the day, you know, you're still being productive and you're still working towards that end goal of getting to where you want to go as an artist.
Absolutely. No, that completely makes sense. I have two things I want to say. The first thing I want to say is I was listening to one of Sam Matla's EDM podcast episodes, and in it he was talking about this, where it's like you should have something on the side that you're doing that relates back to, you know, your brand or your business or whatever, because the people who spend 12 hours a day in the studio just creating music, or 10 hours or 8 hours or whatever it is, they're the exception. They're not the rule. Most people can't do that, whether it's time constraints or whether it's just like mentally you can't do that. What he suggested, like he's done some studies and everything on it, and basically what he suggested was he looked at violin players, like major violin players. Basically the study states that they can only practice for 4 hours a day before anything after that is just crap, you know? And so basically he's like, what I suggest to you is that you produce for 4 hours a day at a max. If after those 4 hours you notice that you can keep going, so be it. But if you're practicing the right way, so I guess in our terms it would be producing the right way. If you're producing the right way after 4 hours, you should be mentally destroyed.
Exactly. You know, I was listening to Tim Ferriss, and there was also a similar concept. I personally believe in the 2-hour rule. Every single day you have about a 2-hour window where you can truly be creative. Like how many times, and I'm sure both of you have done this, you sit down in the studio, you get going on like a track, whatever, you've got some really good vocals, and you bang it out, like you bang out a decent concept in 2 hours. And you stick with that idea for the entire time. I believe if you can do that every single day, and also it takes a lot of pressure off your back too, because if you hear these people, they're like, oh, I just spent 12 hours in the studio. Well, what were you doing for like 7 hours? Like just like working on a kick, that would really kill my vibe. That would drain me. So if you can give yourself 2 hours a day, and maybe not even a day, maybe like you give yourself 2 hours every second day just to sit down in the studio, that's enough time. Like put on a timer or whatever, jump in there, start working on something. You'll just like feel a lot more. Plus also we're human. So sitting behind a computer is definitely not normal. I believe you actually have to go outside, maybe like go to the gym, maybe do something, go connect with people, go do something completely different.
What you said about going out as well, like, that's like super important, especially for songwriting, because I'm going through songwriting right now. Like that's my main focus. Songwriting is just stories. And how can you write about a story if you're just sitting in front of your computer like 24/7? You have to go out, you have to make mistakes, you have to have stories to tell.
I 100% agree. And all the best songs are written about stories that like where, people can connect with. And sitting in a dark room behind a computer, you'll never create those kind of stories unless someone writes for you.
you can probably write like 2 or 3 songs that people can relate to if you're, sitting in your room, but that's about it.
Exactly. And they're typically very depressing.
Exactly.
Unless you go like, do you guys know who Bass Hunter is? Unless you go Bass Hunter. So I highly, Max, I can see that you said no, but I highly encourage you to check out Bass Hunter. So he had a song called Now You're Gone, and he had a song called Dota. Anyway, so he has like 3 or 4 songs that he came out with within like the 2005, 2006, 2007 area. And every single one of them is about a video game and how he loves that video game so much. But yeah, dude, that's what Now You're Gone is about. It's about his character in the video game dying. But I loved Now You're Gone. Like, I thought it was super emotional. I thought, well, I don't know about super emotional, but I liked it back in high school and everything. And then later on, when I found that out, I was like, holy crap, that's about a video game? And same with Dota. What I'm trying to get across is that, like, look at those songs, right? And you're a perfect example of this, Brandon, because you literally just found out those songs were good until you found out what they were about. And then you're like, oh, that's like the quality's still there, but it's kind of lame. And it applies to, you know, like, let's say that you get super creative, you know, you're in your house all day, but you get super creative and you basically tell this amazing love story, but all of a sudden people find out it's between your headphones and your microphone. That's the love story. You know what I mean? And they're like,
It's just not authentic, right?
Exactly. It's like, I don't know. It's like too synthesized, too fake, too, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, I don't know. It just doesn't resonate with you anymore. I mean, anyway, circling back, I had one more point that I wanted to point out on the business side. Me and Max were talking about this the other night. He asked me my opinion on ghost production and everything like that. And so he asked me, he's like, what do you feel like that, or like having a team of people that help you do that? And I told him, I was like, if you look at any other business in the entire world outside of music, they have a team and no one gives 2 craps, right? You're not going to walk into a major corporation. You're not going to walk into Coca-Cola and see one guy there doing everything. That makes no sense whatsoever. But then we look at music and expect that one person to do everything. We expect him to do social media and to write all the songs and to do all this kind of stuff. And we freak out when he doesn't do every single little bit. You know, we freak out when he didn't himself build his PC that he's creating the songs off. You know what I mean? It's like, it's insane. And so my thing is that, like, when you get to that level, you are a business. You are a force of nature at that point, and you don't have unlimited time. Most of these people, they have families. Most of these people, they have health conditions. Most of these people, they have things that they have to do. And so this is my rule of thumb with ghost production or songwriting or help with songwriting or whatever. At that point, it's a very gray area, and I think it depends on the person. You know, if the person is just a face, then by all means let everyone write their songs for him. But if the person has a love for music and then is allowing other people to write that music, to me that doesn't make sense. To me, that's going against the artistic side. You know what I mean? But at that point, I mean, what's your thoughts on this, Brandon?
Yeah, I think, I don't know. It's a very like touchy subject, I think, for a lot of people. And it was interesting. I don't know if you guys watched it. There was an Icon interview with Gareth Emery, and he talked about this a little bit. If you guys go watch it, I think it's on the Hexagon or whatever. But basically what he talks about is he's really good at writing melodies. And that's kind of all he said. But he's like, I am a business owner. I'm Gareth Emery. I mean, I've been producing songs for a long time. He's like, I love melodies and I love vocals. And so basically what he does is he'll write the melodies, and he's like, there's just other people that are really good at mixing. There's other people that are really good at mastering. There's other people that are really good at developing tracks. And I believe, like, when you get to that level, as long as you're still having, like, and I'm thinking way down the road, like, if you've got a family and you're just really good at that stuff, and that's what like fuels you, is writing melodies, by all means, you should be doing that. And you should be keeping to that. And then, you know, hire someone that's better at writing, like, more production side. That's cool. As long as you're authentic about it. If you lie to the people and you lie to your following, then I think that's when it gets a little bit rough. And I don't believe in that. I don't believe in lying. Like, there's got to be a lot more truth in the industry. And I think that's basically my opinion on it.
At one point, like, you kind of have to just, you know, stop caring about what other people think as well. And I mean, I don't think you're lying to anybody until you're lying to yourself. You know what I mean? So, you know, if you're having other people write your songs for you, then, you know, unless, like, then why are you in the game anymore, right? Unless
you're more of like a poster face, right? Like,
exactly. But I mean, I guess the difference why, like you were saying, why before, like, you know, why, like, does Coca-Cola, why, like, people don't expect Coca-Cola to be like one person, but then a music artist to be, they do expect a music artist to be one person, because Coca-Cola is like, it's just an image, right? But like, for example, like, if you look at Tiesto or Martin Garrix or whatever, it's one person. People connect that as just like the person. So that's, so they and most people don't understand that, you know, being an artist is, you know, a business. They just think that these people are just like sitting in back of their computer, or, you know, in front of a piano or a guitar or whatever, and that they're just writing songs all day and most of the time on drugs doing it and whatnot. That's what everybody thinks people do. Like, that's like all of my family. Well, not all of my family, but a lot of my family. They think that like, oh, okay, Max is, into EDM or whatever. He's probably like popping Molly every day and, just in back of his computer, not doing anything in like his parents' basement and whatnot. And it's like, but it's not that, it's a business. It's really running a business.
Yeah.
So
I think you have to be really clear with people too on like your intentions and who you are. And that will come through, right? If you just like, even with your family, if you can relate back to that, even if that's just their opinion, right? And if you're just yourself and you just love what you do, then there's nothing to hide. But if you are doing that kind of thing, like if you're doing that stuff and you don't feel confident in yourself and you're lying to yourself, then it's going to be extremely obvious. And I'm sure we can all find examples of that in our lives.
No, I agree. You brought up a really interesting point, Max, when you were saying, and you confirmed it, Brandon, with the comment that you just made, where it's like, you're right. Now that I think about this a little bit more, when I think of McDonald's, when I think of Walmart, you're right. I don't picture one person. I do picture in that, I picture them as a corporation. I set up an expectation. This ties back to the other thing that you and I were talking about. But you're right, because when an artist comes out, let's say it's Skrillex, you know what I mean? The expectation that is presented up front and no one corrects is that Skrillex is an artist. He makes his music, period. The common listener doesn't go much deeper than that. The common listener isn't like, I wonder who Skrillex's tour manager is, or you know what I mean? And so when that expectation is broken, when they finally find out the truth, which is he has multiple managers, he has songwriters sometimes, it's so on and so forth, depending on the case-to-case basis, that it breaks that expectation. This actually makes a lot of sense now. I always wondered why people had such a hard time with it, but you're right. I believe it just comes down to patience.
That's such an interesting topic, and I've learned about this earlier in the year. It was expectation. Imagine if the world didn't have any expectation. That is where, like, when you're unsatisfied with someone, that's all because you have expectations. So let's say you're going on a date with someone and you have expectation that they're going to be an amazing person. They're going to be like the person you marry, and you go out on that date and they're not that. Your expectations are lost. But let's say they're still like an awesome person, but you like were expecting them to be something much greater than that. Then you're inevitably, as humans, we're not gonna be satisfied with that person, even if they are decent. And the higher, if you drop all expectations in life, and it's extremely hard to do, but if you just go out and you have no expectations, like let's say you're going out for a party and you have no expectations whatsoever, like you don't know who's playing, you don't even know what the party's going to be like, you're going to have the best time of your life. And I challenge people to try that. Just drop your expectations of anything. And I guess relating back to the music side of things, like even with Skrillex, who really, like, I guess as a fan, if you have expectations, but if he's just honest about it,
yeah, that's true.
Then I think it's a clear road, and that.
But I mean,
comes back to honesty.
Because actually, this was something that I had on my notes that I wanted to talk about, and this fit in perfectly. But yeah, this is something that Wyatt and I talked about a few nights ago as well. That's actually something that I had been struggling with, was setting expectations and always being disappointed by them and whatnot. And we came to the conclusion that you can only expect from yourself, but you can only hope that others are gonna, meet your expectations. Basically, you can only hope that others are going to do something and expect yourself to do something. You know what I mean?
Right.
And but again, like, I still set expectations. I still set expectations just because I think we would, even though we get disappointed, we're going to get further in our goals if we do set expectations than if we don't. Because if we don't set expectations, then it's kind of like, if today I do something, then something happens. And if not, then nothing will happen, or, you know what I mean?
No, 100%. And I think it's very important to set expectations and set realistic expectations. But it's when you set outside your boundaries, when you get extremely disappointed. So let's say you release a track and you're like, I'm expecting to get 30,000 plays on this song overnight, and you're like, I don't know, like a very low end artist, like you've got 500 followers on SoundCloud, and you expect that, you're going to be extremely disappointed. You have to kind of set in your boundaries.
I completely agree, because I love that you said outside of your boundaries, and what comes to my mind is outside of your authority. So, like, for example, if do they have counties in Canada? No, is that just a United States thing?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, let's go by towns. We'll go by towns. I'm sure they have towns in Canada. So let's say the sheriff of one town has expectations of a sheriff of another town. The sheriff from town 1 does not have authority to tell what sheriff number 2 should do, correct? I mean, like, that's federal law or state law. Anyways, the concept that I'm trying to state is this. So once you put the song out, all right, you created the song, you did everything. That's your authority. That's your reign. That's your place of what you can do. Once it's out there, you can't force anyone to listen to your song. You can't tell Spotify or SoundCloud or YouTube, you need to play this song. That's outside of your control. So I think you're right. When we start setting goals or expectations that are outside of our authority, basically, you're setting yourself up to fail.
I agree on that 100%.
Because Max brought up a really interesting point. So a lot of people down in Panama, they're what was the term you used? Flakey? Not trustworthy. What was it?
Yeah, just flaky. I mean, they uncommitted basically. They always say that they're going to do something, and I'm not saying everybody does this, but a lot of people do. And so they always say like, oh yeah, like for work, whether it be for work, just like business relationships, friendships.
Yeah.
Love relationships, anything. It's always like, oh yeah, I'll go, don't worry and whatnot. Like I promise, and their word just doesn't mean anything here.
Yeah, man, you're talking about impeccability with your word, right?
Exactly.
And that's also an interesting topic. I mean, we can touch on.
Love to.
And that's also a huge thing for like this year's growth has been being impeccable with your word. So what you say you're going to do, your word is the only thing you have. And if you live by that, if you say something and you don't follow up with it, you've got nothing. You're absolutely nothing. And I've worked with artists before that they say they're going to do something and they won't do it. And I'm a 3-strike person. So, I mean, there's probably people that have a lot less strikes than I do, but I'll give you 3 strikes. If you say, hey, I'm going to get this artwork to you by Thursday, and Friday rolls around and you don't have it to me, boom, you just cross it off with me. I'm like very, very strict with this. And you have to honestly honor your word as like the most valuable thing you possibly can have. And as soon as you speak it out into the universe, it is there, and you almost have to do it. So it's a very hard topic. And those people that aren't impeccable with their word, those people I believe you shouldn't be working with, and give them 3 strikes. After that, it's like you just have to, as much as cool, they might be a really great vocalist, it's a business, and we'll get back into that. Like, you are a business, and you have to be strong with your word, and you have to be able to say no as well.
I agree. I remember when I was like 19 or something, and my brother, I loved hanging out with my brother and everything, and we wanted to go do something one day, right? He always struggled with this. He always flaked out. Exactly like what you're talking about with a lot of the business people down in Panama. That was him to a T. Like, I loved hanging out with him, but I couldn't trust him to save my life. If he said that he was going to show up at 3, he's going to show up at 7 a week later.
And how annoying is that? Yeah. Like, we always remember those people. They're the worst people to work with. They're so bad. Like, why do we put ourselves through that?
Exactly.
I've just started doing something. I've been signing contracts with myself. So basically now, in the last week, I signed 2 contracts. I actually signed a contract saying that I wasn't going to take any more DJ gigs in Panama just because of that. Like, it's always like running around trying to get paid, and there's no use for it. And it's always people flaking out, or I go to a gig and then they're like, oh no, finally, like, the event got canceled or something. You were selling out like 500 tickets. We sold 500 tickets and you just canceled the event. Yeah, whatever. It doesn't matter. So I signed a contract with myself saying I wasn't going to accept any more gigs in Panama. And then I signed another contract saying that I was only going to give people 2 chances. If they flake out twice, I'm never.
That's good, man. Yeah, you're a 2-strike person.
Exactly.
That's good.
I completely.
Yeah, I think that's really important, Maxim, just to like write those contracts. I've heard of that before, and you're like writing it into existence. And I challenge people to do that as well. And this music industry, that's one thing that really bothers me, is how almost corrupt this music industry is. And the deeper you go, the more people like they feel more entitled, so they basically think they own you or whatever, and they can make this decision. But at the end of the day, I believe 10 years from now, if people like us start to rise through, and there is a lot of artists that are coming through, and if you're just honest and authentic, I think we can like change the industry and make it a lot more real.
I agree. I have a comment and I have a question. Comment is going back to my brother. I remember we were having a really heart-to-heart conversation. I was like really exactly like what we're talking about right now. I was very honest about it, like how frustrating it was and everything. And this just came out, and I never heard it before, but it just like came out, and I was like, oh my gosh, like that's really deep. But it's like, if you can't trust someone with their word, what can you trust them with? You know what I mean? Like, literally, there's nothing else that you can trust someone with if you can't trust someone with their word.
Your word is everything.
everything.
It is everything. And it's like, it's those people that use that tool. They use like this very valuable tool and they like flop on it.
Yeah.
Like that, it blows my mind. But as long as you're not doing it, then you're golden. And it takes years of practice, man, just to like get it. And it's good at this early age we're able to do that.
So here's a question for you guys. Then following up with this, the same topic is basically what constitutes as a strike for you guys, or what constitutes as a flake? Because I have my personal definition, but I'd love to know what your guys' is. What makes you put the strike on that person? You know what I mean?
They say they're going to do something and they set a timeline. And also you're responsible for setting that timeline too. And they don't follow up with it. And they don't let you know too.
That's a big thing.
So let's say that's a big thing. If they don't let you know, there's times as well where, actually personal example, I got invited to go boxing with one of my coworkers and she's like, "Hey, Wednesday this time." And I was like, "Okay, yes, I will be there. I'm telling you, I'm going to be there." Wednesday rolled around. I'm like, you know what? I honestly just can't make it. So I text her. I'm like, "Hey, you know what? Today's just not going to work out. I'll be honest with you. I just can't. It's just not going to work. I apologize." And she's like, "Oh, you're a flake, blah, blah, blah." I'm like, but I'm still letting you know that like, it's just physically not going to work today. So as long as you can be honest about it, but it's those people, and I have friends like this, somewhat friends, not really friends anymore, that you'll text them and you'll be like, "Hey, let's hang out at this time." And they're like, "Cool, perfect. Come over to my house." That time rolls around and you don't hear anything from them. And it's almost like they have this fear that they don't even want to be real with you.
Yeah.
They're like, they're afraid to be honest. And I find that so interesting.
Yeah.
That's a flake in my opinion.
I completely agree. And Max, I want to hear your thoughts in just a second, but like, I agree that you brought up a very, 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 very important point. You are not a flake if you let the person know. And I would say also if you reschedule as needed, you know what I mean? So for example, this is a perfect example because you did an amazing job with the podcast. We had it scheduled for one day, but then you're like, "Hey, I can't do it this night. Can we do it on this day?" Yes, we can. You are not a flake. You followed up in plenty of time. You told us, so on and so forth. You know what I mean? And that was a very good thing for you to do. And if you just wouldn't have showed up and still are not talking to me about it, you know what I mean? Then yes, that constitutes a flake, but not.
And then if you look from my perspective too, like if I were to do that to you and you would have been like trying to follow up with me and be like, "Hey, Brandon, like let's do this podcast." Like looking from my perspective, you're almost like kind of chasing me.
Yep.
And I feel really bad about that. Like that's not cool. You should not be chasing like opportunity like that. I don't care how big the artist is. I don't believe it. I give it 2 strikes, man. 2 or 3 strikes. And if that artist doesn't follow through, then I don't know. Why would you be taking advice from them anyways?
I agree. What's your thoughts on this, Max?
I basically have like, okay, so for my 2-strike policy is just like, if they keep on rescheduling, but I mean like, if they call me up and then they're like, I can't make this, or we can't do this event, or we can't whatever, on this date, I'm really sorry. Like this is what came up. I really want to do this with you or whatever. Can we reschedule it for this date? Then I'll be like, okay, I understand, especially in this industry. That's fine. Yeah. That doesn't really count as a flake, but when they don't really get back to you, or they just kind of like forget about you, I guess, or whatever, it's just like, then it's just like a 1-strike policy for me. Yeah. I mean, like flakiness, I think just comes from a lack of organization, And
I honestly think it comes from a lack of care.
I think it's both, to be honest.
But I think it's more organization, honestly.
Yeah.
And integrity.
And I think integrity is so huge. Like basically everything we're talking about is integrity.
Mm-hmm. Because honestly, the lack of organization technically is a lack of integrity. It's a lack of taking care of things. It's a lack of planning things out. And then it's also a lack of caring. It's a lack of, you know what I mean?
All right. Okay. I just Googled the definition of integrity. Okay. And it says the quality of being honest and having strong moral principles.
Perfect.
So
it's a lack of integrity, I think.
So kind of like as an artist, what do you think, like, where do you think you are now in the circle of whatever, the cycle of an artist? Like, where do you think you are now? What do you think your next step is?
I love that question. That's really good. So I think I'm still in the early stages of my career. Like as much as I've been DJing for a long time, this process of an artist takes like years and years and years. And some people think it takes like only a couple of years to get big. And I think we can all disagree on that. And at the current moment, I think I'm a solid like three years into it of like solid music production. So I'm like just breaking in And there's still like some bigger artists that I used to look up to that now are like starting to communicate with me. So I'm getting to that level. But I think, who was it? It was either Sam Matla or another podcast online that kind of broke it down into like, or was it Grav? I don't know who it was. They broke it down into like the different stages of an artist. And I still think I'm at the bottom tier, and you can base it all on like your shows that you're booking. I think that's the biggest one. Is it's all about your shows. How many shows you're booking, how many people know about you, how many people are listening to your music. And I'm really just starting to break in. Like I've got a lot of unreleased tracks that I'm going to start putting out there, and people are going to start hearing my music and they'll be like, hey man, I really like your music. And that's starting to come up. Now for a few years down the road, that's also another really good question. I mean, I have a lot coming down the tunnel as far as new music videos, a lot of new music. I think I have like 5 EPs ready for next year.
Holy crap.
Yeah, like it's like all vocal EPs that are super banging, that like I get chills from still. So I think those will be really good, and I'll set up a schedule for releasing those, but I'll send them out first. But I believe it goes in like a tipping point. Like you have to develop your foundation. You have to, and that's why I love Icon so much, is they help you figure out who you are, what is your foundation, what do you want to do, what impact you want to create, what's your story, all this. You start with that, and then you start to build on top of it. And right now I'm building the pillars. I'm building what genre of sound do I want to make? Like I know my sound, I know my brand, I know who I am as a person, I know what kind of impact I want to create on the industry. And so if you start with that, then your music starts to come. Just over time, you'll start making music. And all of these songs that I made, I had no idea I was going to make. People just like, I started meeting people. I started working, like some demos came in. I was like, these are really good. Like I'll start working on this. And yeah, once these go out, once you have music that's tangible on Spotify and all that, and people start hearing you, that's when they become real fans. And I have a lot of following, but really it's not original music. It's more just like mashups and all this stuff. And people are like, he's a sweet DJ, but now I want to be more of like an artist. So in the next year, I plan to have some hits come up. And so people can honestly like find me on Spotify and be like, I love this guy's music. Like I'd love to go see him play a show. And I plan to book more shows. I hopefully plan to tour across Canada in the next year or so with festivals, depending on like a management situation. And then over like a 2 or 3 year period, I plan to have my clothing business up and running to the point where I can basically do music full time and then tour. In the next 3 years, I'd love to be touring at least 150 days of the year. That's my goal.
That's incredible.
Like it's very specific, very specific.
That's awesome. So you brought up the concept of the basically the different tiers that artists fall into. So that's from Gravitas, from Jesse Breda, I believe. I think so. But it's really, really helpful, especially, to gauge your career. If eventually you do want to be the touring DJ, the so-and-so, then yes, definitely base it off how would you say, off the amount of shows that you're doing, of course. But then, like people. I
got a quick question. Just like for the people like me who haven't seen this interview or whatever, where do we find it? Where did you guys?
From Jesse?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good question. I think it's on their Gravitas Create page. Or maybe be on their YouTube. That's a good question.
For sure.
It was interesting though how I feel like it wasn't Gravitas though, but they explained it based on like following too, on like what kind of levels you're at. Like if you're like getting, I don't know, like 1,000 plays on a song, you're still in like the early stages, like you haven't broken through. But as soon as you're getting like 10,000 plays, then you're starting to like get some traction. Yeah. People start hearing your name and you start booking shows. Management starts looking at you. Yeah, I don't know what that is, but we'll find it.
Gotcha. That makes sense. And maybe we are talking about two different things. I know that Jesse Breda did create something like that, but the concept is still there. Yeah. Where like you can kind of gauge yourself of where you are. And when you find out where you are, then you can set basically appropriate goals within your own authority, basically.
And you'll personally just know where you are. If like people are approaching you and they're sending you emails like, hey, I really want to book you like this, you're just going to know. Like if you're playing a bunch of shows every year, like you're on the uprise, you're growing, but it's that breaking through step. I think this is the hardest part as an artist, is like, I kind of look at it like, imagine you're just underneath the ice. Like there's a frozen lake, you're underneath this ice. And as like an artist, you're chiseling at it. You're like taking big stabs. You're like trying to break through. And a lot of people will try to break through and they're like so close and they give up. Mm-hmm. You're just like, you're chiseling. And as soon as you pop through that ice, you have to chisel a bit more, but like you've kind of made it. And then it's just how high do you want to go from there? How much do you want to grow this brand? How many? Because once you have a good following, you can put out anything and it will just start to grow. Like I believe Getter is like a perfect example of that. And once he broke through, and once he had that massive following of like his studied following, he can basically put out whatever he wants. He can put out, like, his music's pretty cool. He can drop a merch line, people will buy it. He can drop weird music, people will buy it.
What do you think? I think it was Nightmare that did this, but instead of accepting shows, he spent like several years just inside the studio, basically working on music and releasing the music, but not accepting any show until like a year or two later. And so he just grew all of this tension, and then to a point where like he got like bigger festivals like Electric Zoo and whatnot, and he got the attention of a lot of people, and then he started doing shows. What are your thoughts on that approach rather than?
I think it just comes down to patience, on like how patient can you be. And for him, that was like, I think it was extremely strategic, and he was confident enough to do that, because there's some artists that aren't confident enough to do that. So they're like, hey, I made 3 songs that were really, really good. I'm going to put these out right now, and I'm going to try to book as many shows as possible. And I think we can all think of like a bunch of rap artists that did that. They're one-hit wonders. But if you're confident enough, if your brand is a 10-year vision, then yeah, you can be patient and you can wait a year. And I think that's awesome, because as long as you still have content coming out where you're keeping people interested and engaged, and then yeah, go for like a final reveal. It's kind of like Daft Punk. Like, they're a perfect example of this. They hardly ever come out, but I'm sure if they were to ever host a show and they were to do something in America where they're like, hey, we're doing this massive one-shot deal, people are going to buy tickets.
I agree.
A lot of tickets. And yeah, that patience definitely pays off. But as like, from a business perspective, I think it's also important to, but now I guess Nightmare now is booking a lot of shows. So he waited and now he's booking a ton. But if you're just to do like kind of like the Daft Punk mode where you like play a show like once every 3 years, I don't think that's very smart.
No. I agree. But I mean, like at one point when you're as big as Daft Punk, you know, like when they started off, I'm pretty sure that they were doing a lot of gigs, and they were one of the first ones to kind of come out in the electronic dance scene and whatnot. Mm-hmm. And so for them, it's kind of like they're like the tier guys, you know. Okay. So they're like one of the first. So for them, I think like it's okay, because it's like, but again, like, you know, at one point you get so big, and so like as an artist, it's very hard to stay at the top, you know, to constantly be making music once you're there. And as a human, you know, it's normal to want change and to not, you know, want something once you get there anymore. You know what I mean? Or like not be as, you know, once you get there, it's kind of just like, okay, sometimes you spent enough time working and enough time doing stuff. You're just like, and by the time you get there, you might even be old enough to be like, I want to start a family. I want to relaxing. And so, you know, one show every 3 years, big bang. And it, you know, it's,
I guess that was, a little bit different. Like, I guess it wasn't the best example, but even for you, Maxim, like how you wrote the contract that you don't want to book any more shows. I think that's smart, because it takes a lot of self-discipline for yourself, and it comes down to patience. And if you can do that, and you can really, it almost kind of motivates you to be like, and I'm the same way. Like, I told myself this year I would not go to a single festival, not only because they're expensive, but also just because when I go to a festival, I get really irritated, because I'm like, I could be at home right now making music and I could working towards getting up there. So it's almost like I punish myself, if you could call it that, to not go out, and it motivates me to just be more patient. And I know, who was it? I can't think of who it was, but they did a similar concept where, and if rather than spend your money on dumb stuff like that, just be patient.
Yeah, I love, so this concept that Max and I were talking about with like basically building tension and everything. It's an amazing concept inside of any avenue of business. It's called the red theory, and you probably know about this as well. Anyways, the red theory states that don't think about the color red. If you tell people not to think about the color red, they will think about the color red, right? So if you say, you know, if you're like, I'm not going to play a show, well, all of a sudden people want you to play a show, because that's all they can think about. You know what I mean? Especially if you're a hot topic. So I don't know if he still doesn't do this, but Black Mill was a very good example of this, where he made this music. He had quite a, you know, solid following, you know, and a very devout following, but he would never perform ever. I don't know if that's still true, but he wouldn't perform. And so he was one of the most sought out artists to come perform at that point. And so basically, I guess at that point, festivals were banging down his door being like, we will pay you, even though they would be his first show. Does that make sense? And so depending on who you are, whether you like to perform, your strategy, so on and so forth, could be a good idea, could not be a good idea. But I feel like all of us could incorporate the red theory as much as possible to create desire for our fans to want our music, to buy our merch, or so on and so forth.
Yeah, I guess supply and demand, really.
Yeah, exactly.
If there's a lot of demand, and I think that's really cool too. Even like when there's your favorite artist that comes to town and they come like once a year, and you're like, oh, I have to go to this show. Like I love them so much. But if they ever come like 5 times a year, you'd be like, oh, I've seen them like twice this year. It's like,
yep,
it's like mediocre.
So the question is this, or it's basically, to give you a scenario, you go through your life, you've enjoyed your life, you've lived a successful brand in life, right? And you're on your deathbed at this point. And so you look over to your son and you want to pass the knowledge on that you have to him, but you can only do it in a concept. That's all you can give to him. One concept, whether it's a word, a phrase, a couple of sentences, whatever it is. What is that for you to give?
Do what makes you happy, and you will be successful. Dab, dab, I'm out. Our life is very short. And if you follow with your heart and you do what makes you happy, anytime, like how many times when you're smiling, you're having fun. So if you're happy doing what you love, you're never working, you're just living. And I think that's so important. And success comes from just being happy. The happier you are, the more successful. I don't care how much money you have. If you've got a ton of money and you're not happy, you're not successful. So follow with your heart.
Guys, thank you so much. I got to head out right now, but this was amazing. I really, really appreciate you too.
Thank you for having me, man. I really appreciate it.
Hey, DAW Nation. Hope you enjoyed this episode of Behind the DAW with White Light. Hopefully we were able to help you understand the business side a little bit deeper, help you get intrigued with it so that you're not afraid of it, so you're ready to tackle that side of the music industry. If you are interested in those links that I talked about in the description, those links are for the Patreon, giving suggestions for artists to come on the show, and for private lessons. If you're interested in any of those, go ahead, click on the links. You don't even have to follow through. If you just want to check them out, go ahead and check them out. That's totally fine. Go ahead and click on them. Again, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, repost, follow, whatever is appropriate on the particular platform that you're partaking of this, whether it's on SoundCloud, Spotify, Google Play, Deezer, YouTube, wherever you're partaking of it. It just helps us know that what we're doing is legitimate and that we're on the right path of what you need in this podcast. So finally, the last thing, make sure to check out the next episode of Behind the DAW. That is episode 8.5 with White Light, where he's breaking down the song that's playing right now and that played in the intro. It's called Happy Hour. He's going to break it down. You can either listen to it on episode 8.5 or you can watch it on YouTube so you can see everything in real time. Go ahead, go over to YouTube, type in White Light in the DAW. Should be the first thing that pops up. Again, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Behind the DAW. We'll catch you next time, all right? Hey, DAW Nation, you have a fantastic day. All right, we'll talk to you later.